So today I wanted to answer the question about one of friends, Mr. Twig Branch's comment about how belief in astrology can affect how we treat each other. Everyone has different beliefs, and there are so many different ways astrology is believed to affect people. He he asks, but how can it change how we treat others based off it? So that that question has a very simple answer. Like, I don't want to do 8 minutes on a video talking about unrelated stuff because it's actually pretty simple. So there are these things called planets within the star chart or astrology chart, where the planetary influences act as indirect suggestions within experiences to construct a pattern for people to recognize easily that what is considered convenient and pleasant experiences for them and what is inconvenient experiences for them. That is the main way how astrology can change how we treat others based off it. But whereas if astrology has only like one direction or vector to try and alter how we treat people, astrologers that use them has two different separate vectors instead. Astrologers can change how we treat others based off astrological directions in these two ways, which is number one, through either the psychology of fear and convenience, which is similar to astrology itself, or number two, through the psychology of self-image and wanting to be impressive when it comes to comparison and within the realms of narratives. That is it. That is literally it. I only used 25 words plus minus to answer this question. So since the video is so short, I figured I wanted to add a few extra points or extra, hopefully valuable pieces of information I would like to add. First of all, the phrasing felt like it was not asking. It was a valid question, but the logic is not meaningful to why I wanted to help people using astrology, because it doesn't really answer the big questions, right? It is a valid question, but it's not a meaningful question. For example, let me try to rephrase the question if I wanted to ask a person that wanted to ask some important advice. So it would, instead of how can astrology change how we treat others based off the related advice, I would rephrase the question to more like, why are our attitudes towards others so easily influenced by astrological beliefs? Because the original question, there were like four more blind spots beneath the original question, the main question, which is how can astrology change how we treat others based off its related advice. So the first blind spot that could be is that astrology changes treatment according to personal narratives and perception. Now, what do I mean by that? It means it's more like, how do I put it in good words? It's like personal narratives are more like how to be impressive in parties or in contests or comparing to others. In the more common, right, the usual common typical astrology phrasings and speeches or conversations, right? People would say something like this: Virgos are critical, Scorpios are toxic, Geminis are fake, Leos are narcissists, etc. Or someone might say you're a natural leader because you're Aries, you're emotionally unstable because of your sign. These are the typical, significantly more common directions or horoscope given by many astrologers. That is what is happening right now. So people, if you see these phrases, these has a common pattern. It's like you need to stand out or be unique or be better than others. This is a very common setting within parties or competitions or when comparing with others. This is particularly relatable because I don't know about you guys, but in Eastern families usually there's a comparison between family members, which happens a lot. So when he asked this question, I was thinking maybe there's a subtle pre-assumption that needed to be taken care of. And I'm not saying astrology cannot change treatment, right? I certainly have derived away from typical astrology and tried to work on actual goodness and qualities just based off the people's personalities, how to let them have more wisdom and integrity, just using chart as a medium or a kind of like gateway to try to read into their personality or how their psychology works. But most typical astrological tools or astrologers usually try to either intentionally or unintentionally try to tell people to compete with each other through their advice and directions. So this is the first point. The second point is about that there is like a clear mechanism about how can astrology change how people treat others based off its related advice, which is partly true. It's more like there's like, because there are 12 signs, it's kind of like 4 trailblazers and 8 mirrors corresponding to each of the trailblazers, like 2 mirrors corresponding to 1 trailblazer. And there's like 2 different main categories. This one is a lot harder to explain in detail. Maybe I will need to explain a little bit more in detail about how do they work in categories, as different categories. How do I categorize these 12 signs or houses or planets? I'm sorry, houses are like a life lesson. Signs or planets, how do I classify them, etc. Hopefully I will do another video in the future about this. But I do believe that is more accurate to just delay it as for the third point, which is astrology is a single thing rather than many beliefs practices. That is true that the mechanisms behind astrology is not just monotone, but it's not a lot more simplistic than most people might have expected. I think it's also the second point. About the second point, there is one clear mechanism. The statement is because that the mechanism does not help with helping people to know what to do the best in life. How to put it this way? It's like kind of like you focus more on controllable elements like wisdom, integrity, anger management, meditation, things like these. But the mechanism may be very clear, crystal, and vivid within astrology. Maybe astrology does have a mechanism. There is a mechanism in how the astrology change how we treat others based off the related advice, and it can be indeed clear the astrology mechanism of the astrology, but either the mechanism is leading people towards either to be obsessive about physical stimulus or be obsessed about narratives. So that's why I didn't want to talk about the mechanism in detail, because one, relationships is most important when the same two people want to build a life together. And also, like, at least for my particular version of astrology, it's, although it's more valuable, it's very different from the other mainstream typical more common astrological doctrines. So hopefully you guys are willing to be more aware of that. And another assumption that this question, um, how can astrology change how we treat others based off related advice, that also might imply human treatment is merely caused by astrology instead of mainly people's interpretations or how they make choices. And this kind of like, it's not necessarily like people, it's not like people can, it's not like, it is indeed true that mainly relationship is two people making choices to work towards building a relationship. But you know when this question is like framed like this, it might give other people a sense of narrow-mindedness or defeat ist. And so I didn't want to answer that question because it's a lot less impactful to help people reach what they wanted to reach in a meaningful, impactful way. So these are my above concerns about why, when I was looking at this question, I was hesitant to answer it. So the other part of the question about this is that for me, how I interpret the question, or like what can I do to answer the question in the most I can possible, is that I rephrase the question to why are our attitudes towards others so easily influenced by astrological beliefs. Like I said before, it's mainly two different directions between it's not in between, sometimes they can mix together as well. It's between the psychological factors of fear and convenience, which is like physical stimulus, physical comfort, and even sometimes physical contentment too, external contentment. And number two, the desire to be the center of narratives, right? It's kind of like I am superior to you, I am equal to you, these kinds of narratives, etc. So why is it our attitudes are being swayed, affected so easily by many astrological directions or advice? Exactly. So here is my opinion. I don't know if it's accurate, but here is how I think. I think there are a few main reasons. One of which, as I previously mentioned, it's the need of convenience and fear of uncertainty, especially with something like label effects treatment, like what I said previously. Virgos are critical, Scorpios are toxic, etc. Or relationship filtering. People want to avoid obstacles when it comes to dating compatibility, friendship choices, workplace impressions, or family dynamics. Some people, because they feel like Gemini is some archetype they don't like, which is people are way more nuanced, but let's just say like this. So people, okay, then they will proclaim I won't date Geminis, and you can't really blame them. Like, oh, there's like another party of people that might say, oh, people, right, you should put yourself out there. Like, and everyone is different, right? You never know what the other person is like. You know, maybe she or he is a Gemini, but you know, after you meet with each other, you will find that she is the most wonderful person, or he is the most wonderful and kind-hearted person. You know, maybe that is true, but if you don't have a um, very guaranteed or solid doctrine with good reasoning about why do jhanas exist? Is meditation useful, or is there even an afterlife cycle? Right? If it's only this life, life is so fragile. There's only so much you can get out of physical comfort or stimulus. So I'm not gonna say every person is like this, but I would say, like, you know, a large portion of the population, you know, things like, you know, it is sensible to just have extreme hedonism because you don't know if there's an afterlife or not. You don't know if there's guaranteed. Now, I personally have a mixed sense of belief or like skepticism towards the afterlife, but overall I do believe in it more than I'm not. But I can see why people wanted to just get as much money as possible in this life, and so their fear about inconvenience is very understandable, and that's why people won't just try to date certain people, which is pretty fair. Or they will just dodge accountability because, like, you know, like, life is so difficult to like gain physical comfort, stimulus, and then pleasant sights and sounds and such, etc. It's only understandable to accumulate as much praise and adulation and money as possible in this life. And so people are very easily swayed or affected by astrological decisions. There was a saying in the DOAC, a Diary of a CEO channel, that Uncle Neil says that 80% of the new generation of teenagers, I'm not sure it's Gen Z or teenagers, like, depend on astrological charts to make their major life decisions, which is very terrifying but also understandable. Like, Uncle Neil was trying to like somewhat shame them, but it's actually a very understandable concern if you understand the psychology. So I think Uncle Neil was wrong in that particular sense. But anyways, coming back to the fear of inconvenience part, that is why people are very affected by astrological advices and tend to treat others differently once they receive a new astrological direction, because of these fears of inconvenience, because they don't want to tolerate uncertainty or ambiguity, as well as emotional discomfort. I think that is a very important concern to look into when you want to explore this question. The other thing about why people are so easily affected by astrology to treat others differently whenever they receive a new astrological direction is because of the fact that narratives framed by common and typical astrology are often very attractive. Do you guys get the idea here? Like, people can become more confident because of certain astrological advice, like, okay, you're a natural leader because you're Aries, or you are really good in relationships because tend to be naturally good in relationships because you have a south node in the 7th house. And this is a double-edged sword to most people, because you are building the advice on a personal narrative or storytelling perspective. you are building it on a storyline of trying to compare, this phenomenon with that phenomenon, or this quality with that quality. Yet the people's abilities and strengths are oftentimes very different. Yes, there are still like, you can still see the pattern as like four different categories. For example, something like um, conveying information and like humility and mindfulness, right? One group is like sacred high work ethic and cherishing life. One group, meditation. One group, wisdom and integrity. The final group. There's still like a small cluster of patterns, but it's not very random and vague when it comes to the logic and reasoning behind it. And it's not like random all over the place. It's like, there are like, 300 different types of like personalities or something. Not necessarily. It's like there's like only like a small number, but like because of the different placements and rearrangement of the planets within the planets and the houses, and also how people treat which one as their priority first. Like for example, there are like three houses that can symbolize the houses for money. One is like donations and charity events. One is like high work ethic, and one is like kind of like a trailblazer and wanted to be properly compensated or new opportunities for money. So depend on your personality or your preferences, you could also like completely explore different options despite having the exact same chart. Or you might explore the same job opportunities, but you might prioritize different order, for example. Even the same exact jobs are completely identical between two same people. The priorities they set differently will express a different um, type of contentment and how smoothly their progress is towards earning their living. And so, when you try to base off your astrological advice, when most astrologers giving them out is based on a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is not necessarily wrong. You need to have a self-fulfilling desire even to try to elevate goodness and wisdom or integrity, because wisdom and integrity, as a like kind of a trailblazer or a visionary, you still need to have the desire to have for you need to have a desire, a initiating desire for self-actualization or self-fulfillment. But the typical common astrologers nowadays, they tend to be too obsessed with the self-fulfilling prophecy part of the human psychology, and that is why people, whenever they receive a new astrological directions, at least most of the time or majority of the time, when they treat others differently, it would tend to leave a sour taste in the recipient's mouth, or it tends to come off on rubbing on others as unconvincing. Right? There's no consistent logic, and the basis on a self-fulfilling prophecy, not actually reasonable wisdom and treating others priorities first. So this is what I think about when it comes to why I wanted to rephrase the question from how can astrology affect how we treat others based off its related advice, to why are our attitudes towards others so easily influenced by astrological beliefs. So this is the end of video today. Thank you. Goodbye.